So, we've seen how deliberate development organizations help people identify their edge, their growing edge. We've seen how they create a home, a culture of vulnerability and mutual support. But how do they actually practice? Well, this is the third element of a DDO: grooves. Most organizations rarely make feedback a continuous experience. So, in a lot of organizations, you just get feedback maybe once a year. But even in organizations where feedback is frequent, it tends to be oriented to tracking and correcting behavior. In contrast, feedback in a DEO is considered incomplete or superficial unless it explores beneath behavior to the assumptions and mindsets that underlie it. So it's not enough just to tell someone they need to fix what they're doing on this project or this behavior, but the feedback should help them create their own perspective on the assumptions and mindsets that are producing that behavior. That's the only way you're going to produce sustainable change. In other words, DDOs try to take what's invisible, what's behind the behavior, and make it visible. In a DDO, it's not your KPIs, it's not how many things you get done in the average week, but rather your cognitive processes, your internal behaviors, patterns of thinking, and psychological strategies, especially for managing stress or fear or other difficult emotions. This is the focus of what we try to reflect on. A Bridgewater debrief or a Next Jump talking partner helps employees explore what's going on in their own minds, including what are our tendencies we have to distort things, to focus on some things that are maybe not problematic and ignore things that are? What are our habits of self-protection that could lead to blind spots? What can we learn from our choices about the ways we work psychologically? So let's take Sergio again from Bridgewater. Sergio, the self-identified people pleaser, ends up with a suboptimal set of slides for a presentation. That was the problem from the previous video. Bridgewater's culture, rather than engage this shortcoming only at the level of improving the slide deck, here's how you make better slides for a meeting, pulls Sergio into a bigger field of consideration, meaning the cause of his decision. Helps him by getting him to ask these questions of himself. How did he visualize the process by which he was going to produce those slides? What was the bigger motivation behind his behavior to delegate to this junior team member? How does his people pleasing give him a bigger inner context for understanding why he's defending slides he doesn't even agree with? These are the kinds of deeper psychological questions that help Sergio move from a socialized mindset to a higher level of mental complexity. And what you see is that these kind of practices, this groove, is composed by practices that you can do yourself, these micro-level practices, and both Bridgewater and Next Jump have face-to-face and digital tools to help this. It could be just by yourself, or it could be one-on-one in the case of talking partners. They have team-level practices that help teams think together, share their growing edge, give feedback. And they have macro-level practices at the level of the whole organization. And to learn more about these, I recommend reading Keegan Leahy's book, In Every One Culture, which really goes into great detail on the grooves in place at Bridgewater Next Jump, all these practices that help their people develop. And Keegan Leahy tie this back to this a great philosopher, Aristotle, that we've seen before. As you experience yourself as incomplete or inadequate, but still included and accepted, and experience the capable people around you as incomplete and inadequate, but no less admirable. These experiences seem to unleash compassion and appreciation that all of us might hope for in our relationships, and that characterize the underlying feeling in a DDO. Right? This is not saying that every organization will flip a switch and become like this, but this is trying to give you the ability to picture what it's like to be in an organization that really develops the capacities of its people. What would that feel like, right? And it would feel much closer to the eudaimonia that Aristotle describes than the cultures of fear and political games that characterize many of our organizations today. So, finally, we might ask, what can each of us do, given that many of our companies are very far away from this practice that Next Jump and Bridgewater and other companies have put in place? What can you do today to help your company become deliberately developmental? Well, Keegan and Leahy say there are things you can do to start tomorrow. You can choose someone to become a development buddy with. Do this immunity to change exercise together that you're about to see. Identify and seek input about your growing edge, right, from someone who you trust. As someone who knows me and wants to help me grow, what could I be doing differently that could make me more effective? So through conversation, help identify something, a backhand, and to use the next jump lingo, or the growing edge. This thing, again, it's not a flaw. It's not a mistake to be ashamed of. It's a place where you need to grow. Seek small, regular, meaningful feedback, not just once a year, but something that's regular, and not just, hey, how am I doing? You're doing great, excellent. But something that's meaningful, maybe just a few minutes, and regular, once a week, once a month, from trusted observers of your work, people who see you do what you do. And if possible, bring your manager into your agenda. Say, this is the thing I'm really trying to work on. I could use your help. And look around and see who else in your team or organization is good at the thing you are trying to work on, at the growing edge you're trying to work on. And watch them and, if possible, seek out their strategies and their coaching as well. So that's things you can do yourself. And how could we change an organization? Well, there are two models that Keegan and Leahy have done in their roles as coaches and advisors to companies. One is called the top-down model, and the other one's called the middle-out model. So here's a top-down model, and they hide the name of the company to protect their identity. 100,000 employees, annual revenues of $20 billion. So Keegan and Leahy go in with 10 senior managers at the very top. They create immunity to change maps. And then they work with 4 groups of 150 managers each of whom runs a business unit. Each has a team underneath them of 8 to 10. The head of leadership development then introduces to 1,000 employees in 12 countries, spending 3 or 4 hours with each team, creating immunity to change maps. Then finally, they create a digital platform within the company to share stories of people testing their big assumptions. And you'll see what that means in the immunity to change exercise. So early results for this company, whose identity they're protecting for the moment, is that employees who had participated in this program added collectively $1 billion to revenue versus those who hadn't. So this is the top-down model in a large organization, how that might work. Starting with 10 managers, then 4 groups of 150, then 1,000, and then using digital tools to aggregate people's success stories. So that's one model, top-down model. Here's a middle-out model. A company, it's an accounting company in America called Fraser and Dieter. So this was founded in 1981, nationally ranked. And the leaders of the company said, when we look 10 years out, we see that a lot of the partners who drive the business today are going to be retired. So the goal of the leaders of Fraser and Dieter were to get better at growing people who could become those partners, those business drivers in the future. So how did they start creating this environment of deliberately developmental organization at this accounting firm? Well, first they made a presentation at a partners retreat. They vetted the immunity to change method with 5 partners, and then they created a year-long pilot, creating a developmental community of 10 employees representing many areas and levels of the company. So just 10. And they split them into peer coaching pairs, conducting and interpreting small experiments based on the immunity to change exercise. These 10 participants reported over 100 experiments and 25 peer coaching meetings in the first 6 weeks alone. And those experiments could be talking differently at a meeting, reacting differently to feedback. These are little behavioral experiments that people plan to help them work on their growing edge. And here's some feedback. I've learned that more than a few of our younger people at this company have a lot of anxiety and misconceptions about business development. They think they're expected to be continuously networking with a lot of people they don't know and somehow closing deals with them. Because that assumption has gotten surfaced, I'm able to share my experience that business development is not as complicated as it might seem. It really starts with building relationships with the people you're already serving. So just a little pilot experiment like this has already brought some things to the surface. So you don't have to go all the way towards the Bridgewater model to be able to inspire yourself from by these concepts and to build the edge, the home, and the groove in a way that suits your team and organization. So with this, we're going to move to our Immunity to Change exercise, and I think you're going to enjoy it.